Thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is Zach Ryan, Program Officer with Senior Corps. Today on the line with me is Patty Stengel, also a Program Officer with Senior Corps. And Patty will be assisting us with the question and answer session portion. So today I'm going to take us on a walkthrough through the new progress report. This session is scheduled for an hour. It will not take me an hour to demonstrate the PPR, so we should have plenty of time for questions at the end. So I'm going to start from the eGrants screen, and I just click on Progress Report. And my available reports show up here at the bottom. I always want to make sure that I'm selecting the report for the correct period. In this case, I only have one. And so a couple of things before we start. First off, this is the RSVP version. And I'm doing that because there are no differences between the SCP, RSVP, and FGP versions of the PPR. So it's the same report for everyone. However, I do want to point out that this report is only for new grants. So anybody who was awarded a grant beginning January 1, 2013 or after, this will be your progress reporting system. Everyone else, if you're still on the old system, you will use the old PPR. So in other words, if you applied using the new performance measures and using the new performance measure supplement for eGrants, then you will also be using the new PPR. So to get started, if you're new to this system, if you haven't started using the new performance measure module yet, a couple of things. The first, you'll see some screen instructions on the left side of every screen. If I don't need the instructions and I'd like some more space, I can collapse those on any screen. And I'm going to get started by just clicking Begin. And this first section should look fairly familiar to you. This has not changed much since the previous PPR. One thing I do need to point out before I forget, this is technically a draft PPR, as are all the instructions. It's currently with OMB. We are awaiting official approval. So I just must mention this has not yet been cleared through OMB, so this is all technically draft. However, we do not anticipate any major changes. So another thing to look for, these question marks beside some of the fields, I can roll over and will give me some instructions about what information is to be provided in those fields. So in this case, the challenges section, for example, I get a short description. It tells me describe any new challenges affecting my project during this reporting period. You'll also notice, similar to the application, these are orange arrows. When I complete this field, it will actually turn to a green check mark. So I simply click on a field to expand it, and I can type in any challenges that I might find or that I've had during the period, and then go on to the next one. You'll see that it doesn't turn green immediately. I actually have to go to the next screen and then come back in order for that to happen. So once I've finished entering all of my narratives, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because you all are most of you, all the current grantees at least, are very familiar with entering narratives in your project report. I click Next, and this takes me to the progress report screen. This is the main screen that is new and where the bulk of my progress reporting will take place. So you can see there is a table here at the top, and I'm going to collapse the screen instructions so I have a little bit more room. At any time, if I wanted to open them back up, I simply click on the small box there. So you can see these tables at the top. These tables are going to calculate the information that I enter. I do not need to enter any information directly into these tables. I'll scroll down on this screen, and I see this grant is actually the same application that I used or that we use in one of the RSVP sessions. So we have 3 work plans, just so that we can demonstrate how these screens work. So I click on one of the work plans to expand it, and this table is pulling all of the target information I entered in my application, and it's asking me to report actuals against those targets. So in this case, it starts with the output, and I can mouse over and get not the full text, but enough text to remind me what that output is for this particular work plan. tells me H10, number of individuals receiving emergency food from food banks. And I simply enter the number I served here. So this actual number, and this question came up a lot during previous sessions in this conference, and it always does when we talk about performance measures and reporting and targets. This is an annual target. So I am now reporting my actual accomplishment for this reporting period. In this case, it's an annual report, so it's 1 year. My annual target was 30. This is year 1 of my grant. I have accomplished 26. So the question that normally comes up about these targets is they're annual targets, but what if I don't accomplish it at the end of my first year? Your targets, the target that was set in the application of 30 for this output, we expect you to meet that target of 30 by the 3rd year of your grant. So I'm reporting, and it's year 1, I'm reporting 26. I have not accomplished my target, but I'm in year 1, so it's okay. You'll see if I click Calculate Progress, it will actually tell me up here for my total outputs where I am. I'm pretty far off because I have not even entered actual information for most of my output targets. And it will also tell me by work plan, I'm 86% of the way there. This is year 1. I'm 86% toward achieving the target that I set. I think that's pretty good. So and if that question comes up again, feel free to type that question in this particular session. We can talk more about it. I know that's something that comes up a lot, so I wanted to address that right away. And the same goes for all of the targets. That's not just for the output targets. So the targets are annual. We expect you to accomplish that target, or all of those targets, in year 3 of your grant. So I move on and I enter my outcome targets, or my outcome actuals against those targets. You can see on this screen it doesn't calculate until I actually click Calculate Progress. Then it will make the calculation and bring me back up to the top of the screen. Same goes for unduplicated volunteers. I said I would have 8. That's my target. This is year 1. Right now I have 6. Total volunteers contributing. This is another kind of point of confusion, the difference between unduplicated volunteers and total volunteers contributing. For unduplicated volunteers, remember that volunteers may be counted in only one work plan, and that is the same for the target and for the actual. And what I mean by that is when I'm calculating my target, each volunteer can only appear in one work plan as an unduplicated volunteer, and the same is the case when I report my actuals. So I had 6 actual unduplicated volunteers serving in this work plan. Total volunteers, however, I had 18, because I had 18 individuals who were actually performing this service. So the next question that comes up usually is, well, when I report my outputs and my outcomes, do I report only for the unduplicated volunteers, or do I report the number served by the total number of volunteers? And the answer is you report the number served by the total number of volunteers. That way we can be sure that we capture all the individuals that you're serving and all the individuals that are showing evidence of change as a result of that service. So, and the reason we ask for unduplicated volunteers is because it gives us a way to measure where you're putting your resources. If you think about the logic model, and for those of you who have been grantees for a while, we used to ask for inputs. We're not really calling it that anymore. We've limited to what we're asking for in inputs to unduplicated volunteers. So I then enter the number of volunteer stations. Again, it's year 1. I'm not quite there yet. There's a transition period here. I have 3 stations rather than 5. And then I can enter a note here. So, and when we are cleared through OMB, we will issue some more detailed instructions about what we're asking for here in the note. But it will be stuff like, what do you need to explain about this work plan? And I would say something in this case like, in year 1 of our grant, we are making good progress toward our targets. We continue to develop relationships with new stations, and continue with existing stations to get them transitioned to activities that better fit the performance measures, something like that. But again, we'll issue more detailed guidance about that. A couple of things to note on this screen. You see there's a little box here that says Done with Section. I have to check that box in order for this section, which is all required information, to be marked as complete. It's just, I could get into a lot of details about why, but it has to do with the defaults of the system. So just remember to click Done with Section. There's also a little link here for note history. That's because when I submit my PPR, it may be sent back to me for revisions, or my program officer in my state office, when he or she reviews it, may just want to provide some comments. All of those comments back and forth will be captured in this note history. So you can see there's nothing here right now because I have not submitted my application. And when I submit it, that's when this information would be carried over to the note history.
Zach, we have had quite a few questions come in. Would this be an okay time to pause some of those?
Absolutely.
Great. So the first one is, if we were funded before the implementation of the new report, will we still use the old report for years 2 and 3 of the grant, or will we use the new report for the last 2 years?
So the answer is you will still use the old report until that 3-year grant period is over. So when I said new grant starting January 1, that means you began a new 3-year grant cycle starting January 1, 2013 or after.
Okay. The next one is, my grant is using the new performance measures, but we're still reporting on the old PPR. Why might that be?
I have no idea why that might be. You're using, I assume when you say using the new performance measures, you mean using the new performance measures system. Those of you who started using the new performance measure system should not have had a PPR due yet, because there will only be for this year an annual PPR, so it would not be due until next year.
Okay.
Patty, is there anything you want to add to that?
Nothing to add, but maybe at the end we could go into the application and show what that new PPR module looks like, because maybe this person's just confused about the new module. And also some folks might be using new performance measures, but in the old module where they have to type all the information in, the outputs and outcomes. Mm-hmm. And in that case, they would be reporting in our old PPR as well.
Right. Okay.
So we can kind of visually try to show that maybe.
Okay.
So the next question, to clarify, the target is an annual target, but you expect that we will have it reached by the end of the 3rd year, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yep. So how are the annual targets when we put in the entire 3-year number on our original work plan?
So the number that you put in on your original work plan is an annual target that you expect to achieve in the 3rd year. So think of it like this. I'm just starting my grant, and I've entered that I am going to serve 30 individuals in this work plan every year. My target does not change from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, but the number of individuals I'm serving per year hopefully is going up. So in my first year, I'm just getting started, and maybe it's lower than 26. Maybe I was only able to serve 15 individuals because rather than 8 volunteers, I was only able to recruit 2. And then I come back to complete the same report in year 2, and my numbers are moving up. So I'm reporting actuals against that same annual target year after year.
Great. So the next question is, how is it intended that cost per volunteer will be used?
We don't know. We just thought we built this new system, and it seemed like interesting information to be able to have. And that's, Patty, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't.
Okay. We're often asked that information, and so this system calculates it. And also probably good for you to know as a project director as you manage your project.
The next question is the target unduplicated beneficiaries? What if we have individuals who repeatedly received the same service?
Yes, the target should be unduplicated beneficiaries. And if you look in Appendix B, which you can find on the NOFA website, there is some very detailed information for each measure about, some guidelines about how to collect that data. And it will almost always say you must be able to get an unduplicated count of individuals served.
Thank you. So the next question is about feedback from your state office. This person is asking about feedback they received in year one of their application, or year one of their project, excuse me. And they're wondering how that works and compared to the new performance measures. So just to go back, I think it needs to be reiterated, as you mentioned, that the goal for these performance measures is that they will be reached in the third year. But that's different from the last set of performance measures, right?
Yes, correct. It's very different than the last set of performance measures.
So the feedback folks are receiving from state offices from year to year is going to be shifting, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah, because our targets are changing, the annual target versus the old model.
That's correct. And, without having specifics, my first response is, well, that's something to discuss with your state office, because anything that gets that specific into a grant, I'm sure your state office could be able to provide you with a more detailed answer than that.
Right. And so the next question is about a semi-annual PPR. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So the plan is that there will be a semi-annual PPR. It is part of the package that is currently with OMB, which is why we did not have one at the 6-month point this time. But I can tell you what it will look like. So if you look at these tabs, and then we'll start moving through to look at the veterans and the staff summary tabs as well. But it would not include the narratives tab. It would simply be the progress report tab. And on that progress report tab, we would expect you to report outputs and volunteer and station numbers. We would not expect that you would report outcomes at the 6-month point. Because the way most of the measures are designed, if it's pre and post test, or if it's for an entire year, you wouldn't have that information yet. So there will be a 6-month report, and it will include outputs and volunteers.
Okay. The next question is, where do you get the outcome?
Can you help me understand that question a little bit, maybe?
That was all that was typed. So maybe this person will type some more information, and then in the next case, we'll just move to the next question. So the next question is, when we count total number of volunteers, is it only RSVP volunteers, or do we count volunteers that are not part of the program?
Only RSVP volunteers.
Okay. Because those are unduplicated volunteers. And even total volunteers are only RSVP, right?
That's correct. So in this case, I have 20 total volunteers in my program, and 20 are serving in this work plan. So that means all of my volunteers, at least what I anticipated when I set my targets, that all of my volunteers would be contributing to this work plan in some way.
Okay.
I realize that's not going to be the case in real RSVP projects, but this target of total volunteers contributing, or the actual for that matter, should not exceed the total number of volunteers you have that are RSVP volunteers for your project.
Okay. If we record 26 students in year one, I'm guessing it's for an output or outcome target, are those added to the numbers in year two? So do I count a student in year one and then again in year two?
So I think there are two different questions in my mind. Do you add them together? The answer is no. Do you count them in year one and in year two? And the answer is yes. And so here's why we can't simply add them together. The program models vary. And so it's possible that I have my RSVP, or my foster grandparent project, is serving children in the 3rd grade. And then the next year, I get a totally new group of children that the grandparents or the RSVP volunteers are assigned to. So that's one possibility. In that case, I could add them together because they're different children. But what often happens is that my foster grandparents or my RSVP volunteers, and I'm just using those two because I have an education example, the same senior companions, it's more likely this second example, that I'm serving the same clients or the same individuals year after year. So that in a foster grandparent project, for example, I'm serving children who have special needs. I may stay with those children from the 3rd to the 4th grade. So it's the same child in those 2 years. So I can't add them together. But I can count the child every year, because if we're looking at the number of children served over the course of a year, there's a starting point and a stopping point to the year. So I count the total number of children I'm serving in that year, regardless of whether or not I counted them in the previous year. So I have a feeling that maybe I complicated that answer more than it had to be. So if that's confusing, somebody please ask for clarification.
The next question is, how do we get access to eGrants? This is my first time being introduced to the PPR via eGrants.
Okay. Patty, can you actually answer that one?
Sure. So if you go to nationalservice.gov and scroll down to the very bottom of that page, you'll see eGrants, a box that says eGrants. It's basically the very bottom on the left. It's a pretty good-sized box. Hopefully you won't miss it. If you do miss it, it's on various other pages. You can find it on the RSVP competition website. You can find it under Managing Current Grants for Senior Corps. In those particular situations, it's a link on the right side on a sidebar. But basically, you get there from nationalservice.gov.
And Patty, I'm going to move forward to the Veterans tab now, and then we can come back and address some more questions. It seems like there may still be a few questions. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So let me first move forward to the Veterans tab. So I would complete this same process for all of my work plans. One thing I want to point out here before we do move to the Veterans tab is for RSVP, for the Other Community Priorities work plan. You'll notice that the target for measure OT1, which is the Other Community Priorities work plan, this output actually says grantee met their target. And it's a yes or no, and it's not really designed to be a number. We ask that the target that you put in for that work plan is always 1, and if you accomplish your self-set targets, you enter 1 as your actual. If you do not, you would enter 0. And so I just wanted to point that out because it's not a traditional output, but that's only for RSVP. So I'm going to move now to the Veterans tab. And this Veterans tab can be a little bit intimidating, which is why I wanted to make sure we had time to talk about it and address questions. So in the same way that I open the work plans and enter information on the progress reporting tab, I do that on the Veterans tab as well. And so this screen has pulled all of the actuals that I entered on the previous page, and it's asking me some more information about them. Now, this is a lot of detailed information, and a lot of you are not going to be able to get this information, and that is completely fine. This screen, or this tab in the progress report, is designed to allow you to report the greatest level of detail that you can get. It does not mean that you have to report this level of detail. If you have it, we would love for you to report it. But it does not mean that you have to go and design 7 new surveys so that you can collect all this information. And let me just give an example to kind of illustrate what I mean. In this particular case, measure H10 is the number of individuals receiving emergency food from food banks or other organizations. If I am a community-based food bank, I might have no idea. And if that's the case, I simply enter 0 for all of these numbers. However, I may have a program that specifically targets military families who have a parent deployed. If that's the case, I may know how many of this number are active duty military family members. And if it's a program that is specifically geared towards serving that population, maybe I know that it's all of them. So what these fields are asking for is the number who are veterans, the number who are veteran family members, number who are active duty, or the number who are military family members. This non-military family served is going to calculate based on all of these other fields. So again, I just want to reiterate, it looks like it's an overwhelming screen, I think, when you look at this and you think, oh my goodness, I have to report all 4 of these for my outputs, for my outcomes, also for my unduplicated volunteers, and for my total volunteers. We want you to report this information if you are able to. Again, it's very helpful information for us to have. I think it will be helpful for you to have. If you can, obviously we have a lot of constituents and a lot of stakeholders who are really interested in knowing this information. But it's expected that you enter that information when it is available to you. So on this same screen, I could enter the information. I know I have 3 veterans serving in this work plan, for example. And what this will allow us to do is that, you've heard for a few years now that this is all about rolling up numbers and being able to report the impact that our projects have. If we get this level of data, we will be able to say not only that we had X number of veterans serving in our programs, but we could say we had 3 veterans serving in a program in Healthy Futures, and we would have all of the information tied to this work plan to also report about those 3. So, again, good information to have. I hope nobody is overwhelmed with the possibility of being able to report that.
There is one question that's come in about that, if I could go ahead with it.
Sure, go ahead.
Do I need a separate work plan just for veterans, or do I only report in this particular module for them?
So this is one case where the reporting will be slightly different for RSVP as opposed to senior companions and foster grandparents. Senior companions and foster grandparents, this is the only option that you have for reporting veterans information. In other words, you can't have a work plan that uses the veterans measures. In RSVP, you can. In RSVP, if you couldn't get this level of detail and report outcomes for your veterans or for your activities that were serving veterans or military families, you actually can have work plans that use the veterans and military families measures, and there are no outcomes. They are simply outputs, and they are actually the exact same measures as these fields capture, if that makes sense. So you could have a work plan that just asked you to report on the number of veterans that you served, which would be this. So again, what this method allows us to do is just to get a greater level of detail if you can. But it's also possible that you can't get that level of detail, and you can simply have work plans that are output-based about serving veterans and military families.
And can you define family members of veterans?
I can if you look in Appendix B, and I will just read you the definition. So in Appendix B, for RSVP, military family, immediate family members related by blood, marriage, or adoption to a current member of the U.S. Armed Forces, including one who is deceased.
Okay, and will all service activities show up on this Veterans tab, or only those with outcomes, or how are they selected? What will show up here?
So the only ones that don't show up, so if you notice if I scroll down here, I don't have my other community priorities. It will not show up. And it should only be the measures that have individuals served as the output. For example, we have some environmental stewardship measures that ask for the number of acres. Those wouldn't show up here because they do not apply. So the education and healthy futures measures and economic opportunity should all show up in this section.
And will we be reporting this information on the semi-annual report?
No, the Veterans tab is not available on the semi-annual report.
So if we track RSVP volunteers that are veterans, and their spouse is also volunteering, can we count the spouse in veterans and non-veterans and military families?
So I have a couple. One is a veteran, and one is the spouse of a veteran. That means I have 2 volunteers. I would have one in the veterans column and one in the veteran family members column.
An additional question, are veterans only defined as U.S. veterans?
I am looking. The definition in Appendix B says a person who served in the active military, naval, or air force and who was discharged or released therefrom under conditions other than dishonorable. That is not clear. We can definitely find out, but my first response is I think the answer is yes, that it means United States veterans, but we can definitely verify that.
Okay, and can you say again which column is for veterans served?
So the columns are actually the same. So if you look at this screen, you want to look at each row. So these 2 rows for the output and the outcome. So I look here, number of individuals receiving food from food banks and organizations. My actual is 26. Number who are veterans, that means number of that 26 who are veterans. So these top 2 would be veterans served, and number who are veterans would be the actual column. In the same column down here, I would be reporting number who are veterans of my volunteers.
Okay, there's some additional questions, but I'll let you move on.
Okay. So after I'm finished here, I can click Calculate Veterans, and it will, much like the previous screen, calculate in this table at the top. And then I move by clicking Next to the final screen. So on this screen, it will give me a summary of my volunteers by focus area, my volunteers by objective, by category title, and in this case, I only entered information for my Healthy Futures work plan. That's why they are all 100%. The number of volunteers working on outcomes. It provides me with a summary. And then it gives me the opportunity to type in an overall grantee note. And again, we'll provide more guidance about what should be provided in this field, but it should be things that explain any reasons for not meeting your targets. That's what I would anticipate that guidance to say. From this screen, I can also print a complete note history, which would be the complete back and forth between the CNCS staff member who's reviewing my progress report and me, the grantee. Or I could print the PPR summary, which will give me not only the narratives, but the actual progress report information and everything that I've entered for this reporting period by each work plan and overall. And so then when I'm finished entering the information, I would click Submit to CNCS. I'm not going to do that now in case we have questions and someone needs me to go back to one of these pages to provide an explanation. But that is the system. So Patty, we have some more time if we'd like to address some more questions.
Yes, there's an additional question about veterans. So are widowed or divorced spouses still considered veteran family members?
So I'm going to read you, the answer is yes, I'm going to read you the definition of veteran family. Immediate family members related by blood, marriage, or adoption to a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, including one who is deceased. And that information is actually on page 25 of Appendix B, and that is for the RSVP version, Appendix B. For the FGP and SCP grants, best source of information is actually the National Performance Measures website, which, since I am here, I can show you. It's on the Resource Center. It's nationalserviceresources.org/NPM/home. And this first page is a very general page that kind of outlines the strategic plan in terms of goals, goal 1, 2, 3, and 4. Goal 1 is the impact on communities, so that's where the majority of the performance measures information is. So I click on that goal, and it shows me the 6 focus areas. Veterans and military families, it shows me that there is an agency-wide priority measure, and it breaks it down for me. And if I click on that, it should take me to the information about those measures. The other place to do that is on the Senior Corps Performance Measures site. You can see that I have the information organized here by program. And if I look down at the bottom, I can see the Appendix B, and then the performance measures instructions for both FGP and SCP. So if I click on, let's click on the RSVP version. That's Appendix B that I'm talking about. It has a different name because of the competitive, the way that RSVP grants are now competed. But if I click on one of the programs, I see, again, the 6 focus areas. And this will take me, this has all of the same information that's in Appendix B. If I click on number of veterans that received assistance, I can find all of those definitions. So definition, veteran, a person who served in the active military. In the case of your question, I would actually look at veterans' families. So here, a definition of veteran and definition of family members.
Thanks. So can you go back to the Narrative tab and just show the instructions that are on that particular part with the hover over? I think it shows instructions, right, about what to enter there?
Yes, if you hover over the question mark, it will tell me, for example, in this partnership collaboration development, and it's very small probably on your screen, but it says, describe efforts to develop partnerships or collaborations with volunteer stations. You should include efforts to develop new stations as well as efforts to garner support, data collection, volunteer training, etc. from existing stations. So in each of those narrative fields has that information.
Okay, and this might also be a good time to show the work plan module and how you know if you're using a new work plan module.
Okay.
Are you able to go back to the application?
Sure. Do you think that I would be coming back here after? I guess I can always do that.
It's possible.
Okay.
There are a lot of questions coming in.
Okay. So should I just open an application that I've started?
Yeah, I think that'd be easiest.
Okay, so this is how I would know. I'm in my application and I click on Work Plan, and I get this link that says click here to enter work plan. And my screens will look like this. And if I am not in the new system, they would look totally different.
It'd still be orange and gray, right?
They would still be orange and gray, yes.
But I won't have those tabs across the top.
I won't have the tabs across the top, and I won't have this continue working button. And I definitely won't have drop-down menus. Everything will be entered with text.
Great. So the next question, will the reviewer identify themselves in the PPR review?
So the reviewer in the PPR review will be your program officer from your state office. So you will know who that person is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Patty.
No, that's correct.
Yeah, and you will be communicating back and forth with that person, hopefully outside of the regular PPR period. So the answer is yes, you will know who's reviewing your PPR.
So there are a number of questions about cumulative targets versus annual targets. I'm not going to read all of them aloud because they're all along the same kind of theme, but one question in particular around volunteers. So if a volunteer served in year 1 and moved, he doesn't count in year 3, right?
Correct.
So if someone submitted an application previously and they submitted a target that they were going to meet cumulatively over 3 years, what should they do about that?
I would say that if the grant has already been awarded, then you certainly need to contact your office very soon, your state office.
Okay, and the next question is, if a station uses RSVP and non-RSVP volunteers to serve beneficiaries, do we count only those unduplicated individuals served by RSVP volunteers?
So this is kind of a tricky question, and my answer is it kind of depends on what the RSVP volunteers are doing, and it depends on the particular measure that you are using. And I'm going to go back to the performance measures page and show you an example. So let's say this is most likely the case in RSVP, because RSVP is one of the 3 programs that can do capacity building type activities, even if they're not captured with the capacity building measures. So if I click on education and I go to K through 12 success, I want to read through these definitions. So you can see that it's the number of students that completed participation in CNCS-supported K through 12 education programs. So what is a CNCS-supported program? It's a program where you have volunteers. And then let's look at education program. A program in which CNCS-supported activities help students maintain enrollment in and succeed in school. The help that grantees provide does not need to be in direct service to the students. However, the CNCS-supported activities must provide direct support that makes the program possible. So, in some cases, and I know I keep referring to these instructions, but since every program is different, you really need to be able to look at these performance measures instructions and see if what you are doing fits. So in some cases, you may be able to count the individuals who are served who are not directly served by your volunteers. However, you'd want to demonstrate that you have a good system in place and that you are still collecting valid data.
This goes along with valid data. So someone has asked about reporting volunteer service hours. They're not seeing a place to report those. So does that mean that timesheets will become obsolete?
It does not. You still have to collect timesheets and you still have to track time. We're simply not asking for that information on the BPR.
And additionally, we will ask for that information on the progress report supplement. For RSVP, you will report the hours by category, but there's not a total. You'll end up reporting them on the progress report supplement. It'll just look a little different. For FGP and SCP, there is a total hours for the progress report supplement. So you'll still be reporting those, just not on the PPR.
We have more questions?
We do. A moment. So on the Knowledge Network performance measure page, is the FAQ current even though it says 2013?
So the FAQ on the performance measure page is the FAQ, the performance measure FAQ from the 2013 RSVP competition. And I'm just going to show you, I'm on the performance measure homepage, And Patty, help me here. Is it on the Senior Core page or the RSVP page?
I believe Senior Core. Yes. Sorry. Nope. Try RSVP.
So here it is, 2013 RSVP Performance Measures FAQs. These are the performance measure FAQs from the 2013 RSVP competition. We kept these because rather than repeat everything as a new FAQ for 14, we thought it made sense to keep these in place. For 2014, there are additional FAQs related to performance measures, and those can be found on the RSVP competition website. There's a frequently asked questions document here. And there is a performance measures section, and the performance measure section is divided by focus area. I can just click on it and it will take me to that section. And then it also links me back to the 2013 RSVP competition FAQs related to performance measures.
And even though they say 2013, all of those FAQs for performance measures are still relevant.
Yes.
So the next question is, where do we report our survey statistics from clients served? I'm guessing this is from an SVP project.
So on this progress reporting tab, you would have a work plan, and I assume it's a senior companion project. Your output measure would be H8, and your outcome would be H9, and the H8 is the number of individuals served. H9 is the number of individuals reporting increased social ties, perceived social support. So that is the number that you would enter right here. And I believe that there is, for the Senior Companion Program, there is a spreadsheet that helps you determine when you get a survey in with all of the answers, helps you determine whether or not it's a yes or a no. In other words, whether or not that individual can be counted in this outcome or not.
And along those same lines, how do you keep track of unduplicated students year to year for FGP, or does that not matter?
So I think for FGP, you should have an assignment plan for every grandparent, and so you should be able to figure out how many individual children you are serving. I mean, I'm not sure. Patty, do you have any other helpful tips?
I don't. I think you've answered it pretty well, but if clarification is needed, I'm sure someone will send a question about that.
Yeah, and it can vary depending on the activity. I mean, if you have a foster grandparent, then you're using measure ED29, which is number of children served in child welfare, safety, and health. You just need to have some type of log. For example, if that person is in a homeless shelter or in a hospital, you want to have some way that you can record how many children come through every day and receive services from that volunteer.
Okay, so for reporting on education performance measures, if you're a January through December grantee and the school year runs from September to June, you report on the previous school term since the PPR will be due in January.
So you want to report on the actual period, and I realize that gets complicated because it does not fit with the school year in most cases. But if my grant is a January 1, I have, starting January 1, I have grandparents serving kids. And so I count from January 1 to December 31st, how many individual children were served. And it's probably two different groups if it's the case where you're in a third grade classroom and you have one school year's children, and then it comes in you have the next year's school children as well. You want to count all of those children. So I realize it's complicated, but the key is if you look at the performance measures instructions to get an unduplicated count of children served, school year is totally separate from that number. So and not totally separate. In other words, it will likely cross over two separate school years.
Okay. And the next question, will you explain reporting duplicated volunteers again, or total volunteers?
Okay.
Is
So,
a duplicated volunteer only counted once within a performance measure?
so duplicated volunteers, or what we call total volunteers contributing. A volunteer can appear in as many work plans as he or she is serving in both the application and in the PPR. So in this particular project, I have a list of 20 names somewhere. That is my total number of volunteers for the project. I can have as many as 20 showing up as total volunteers contributing because those are people who are serving in that work plan. Doesn't matter how many hours they're serving in that work plan, they are serving in that work plan. The unduplicated number, for the purposes of this calculation, each volunteer may appear in only one work plan.
And does FGP and SCP use unduplicated, or is this only RSVP?
It's FGP and SCP as well. And if for more information about how to do that, you should go back and review the e-courses that are called, let me make sure I'm getting the title correct, Overview and Exercise Work Plan Alignment and Volunteer Placement. And there's a separate e-course for each of the 3 senior core programs. And then after that, you could go back and look at the recorded sessions from yesterday, which were the follow-up. It's called Work Plan Alignment and Volunteer Placement follow-up sessions. Those were the live sessions from yesterday. And I realize a lot of this got thrown off because the sessions were not available yesterday for many of you to view. However, I think they are now and will be for the next 30 days in this virtual conference environment, and then will be after that on the Knowledge Network. So I encourage you to go through those e-courses.
Okay, and the next question, my project received a cut due to sequestration. Should I have revised my work plans to reflect this reduction?
So Patty, I'm going to allow you to address that one.
So this is from either an FGP or an SCP project, and my advice to you is to look at your work plans with your project specialist, your state office, and have them help you figure out whether or not you should have adjusted your work plan to reflect that. For some FGP or SCP projects, they might not have needed to update their work plans, but it depends on your projects and what work plans you set. So the next question is, what will be the consequences if we do not meet our target of unduplicated volunteers in other community priorities in the 3rd year? So what specifically would happen if we did a better job recruiting for our primary focus area and had more volunteers there, but not as many in the other section?
So since it's, again, related to competition, Patty, and I want to be careful with the language, would you mind addressing that?
So I think this speaks around mostly what the repercussions are going to be for missing targets. And what we can share now is that we're still working on what that would be. For this particular situation, it sounds like the volunteer numbers were exceeded for the primary, so that would be good. However, the requirement for community priorities is a maximum percentage of volunteers, so you can't go over that 30% line. And in this situation, it sounds like this project would not necessarily be going over that 30% line. So I can't really give a clear answer for this at that point. This project would still be within the requirements of the performance measures. They'd still be under that 30% mark.
Could we say in general, if you exceed your target in your primary focus area, that's good. And if you are under your target for community priorities, as long as you meet your target for total unduplicated volunteers, that is good as well.
I lean towards that, but as this process moves forward, I think we'll have clearer guidance on it. And again, I mean, we're early on in this, so we'll issue guidance as they come about, and we'll be sure that we communicate on that when time comes.
Okay.
So the next question is about beneficiaries again. So if a station can only give aggregate numbers, so you have RSVP volunteers and community volunteers at that station, and the station can only report total beneficiaries, what do you do about that?
I think you want to have a good documented system for how you're going to report what you report. And I encourage you, in the library, in the virtual conference environment, there should be some information related to the data quality review. I encourage you to review that information, and hopefully that will help you. Otherwise, I suggest that's maybe something that you could talk over with your state office. But you want to have a good, solid system you want to be able to defend the numbers you report. So if somebody comes out to your project and says, wait, you said that this was the number, but you only have documentation of this number, then that's going to be a problem. So just like in other grants management practices, you want to have documented practices for why you do what you do, and you want to be thinking all the time, if somebody comes in to look at this information that I'm reporting, am I able to verify it? And that's information that you'll find in addition to a lot more information in the data quality review materials.
Okay, and there are some additional questions about the semi-annual report. Can you talk a little more about that? When is it going to be available?
The plan is that starting, I think we may have it available for September. The semi-annual report will be a report that looks just like this report that we're looking at now, but it does not have the narratives tab. It does not have the veterans tab. And so we would expect that you would report outputs, volunteers, and volunteer stations information on that report. And this semi-annual report is not something that's specific to CNCS. It's part of a government-wide movement to require semi-annual reporting for all programs. So this is, again, not something that we're just decided to implement for Senior Corps. This is something that government-wide there's a push to have semi-annual progress reporting. And for good reason. It's really so that if there is an issue, that we don't wait until after one full year to see that issue and to find ways to resolve it.
And just to add to that, the reporting period for the semi-annual report would be the first 6 months of that year. But the reporting period for the full PPR, the annual PPR, is the full year. So when it comes time, you're reporting for 6 months, and then it's not like you're reporting for the next 6 months with the annual. You're reporting for 12 months for the annual. So keep that in mind as you report your numbers.
Right. You have an annual target, and your progress report, I think of it like it really is reporting your progress towards achieving those targets. So my annual target is 30. At 6 months, I want to show my progress toward that 30. And then again, at 1 year, I want to show my progress toward that target.
So we do have quite a few questions left, and I don't know if we'll be able to cover all of them. Do you have a number?
I say let's take 3 more questions. I know that we are limited in terms of our time. And then if you feel like your question has not been answered, I encourage you to post it onto the forum, or to a lot of these questions I'm sure can be addressed by your state office. I know that there are limitations to that for RSVP because of competition, so you should feel free to post those questions to the RSVP forum, and let's use the eGrants tabs in those forums just so that we can make sure and identify all those questions. But we can do, I think, 3 more, Patty.
Okay, so there's a question that's continually come in about a misunderstanding about what was requested for the RSVP competition. So the question is, we were told to put in the entire amount for a target for 3 years for a competition. For the competition, the target has always been an annual target. So if you've already competed and been awarded through RSVP competition, as Zach mentioned previously, you need to contact your state office as soon as possible. If you are currently applying for the RSVP competition, it's an annual target that you're putting in. You're putting in an annual target that you expect to achieve in the 3rd year of your project.
And that, I believe, was addressed in the FAQs for the 13 competition. Is that correct?
Yes. So the next question is a semi-annual report based on our grant cycle. So for an April to March grant, would we be reporting in October or November? How does the timing work?
Yes, it's based on your grant cycle. So you would be, each semi-annual report, you would be reporting on your progress of the first 6 months of that grant year.
Okay. Thank you. So in your discussion about volunteers doing capacity building, does the output need to state CNCS supported programs to be able to include volunteers directly supporting that program?
So you want to look at Appendix B at the capacity building measures if you want to use those, if you want to do the capacity building measures. They're very different. It's specific to every measure. So you want to look at Appendix B, and if you're talking about using other measures, like in the language for the education measure that I looked at, it said they did not have to be providing direct service. You want to make sure that what you're doing fits with those definitions and that you are clearly explaining the activities that your volunteers are doing in the service activity description field in the eGrants Performance Measures module.
Okay, and the last question, is it possible to have 0 unduplicated volunteers?
It is not. For the minimum that you can have for a work plan is 1 unduplicated volunteer. And that's just something because the way the system works and whether it defaults to 0 or 1, in order to create a work plan, you have to have 1 unduplicated volunteer.
Okay, so that's all the time we have for questions. Do you want to say again where they can post them if they haven't received a response?
Sure. If you go to the forums, there is a forum for each program, and under each program there are tabs at the top of those forums. So please post these questions on the forums for your program on the eGrants tab. If you click on the eGrants tab for the SCP forum, for example, please post your questions there, and we'll do the best we can at getting answers to all those questions today. So that's it. I appreciate all of you joining today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope you are learning a lot through this year's virtual conference. Thank you, everyone.